Hello, how we doing, guys? We're going to be talking about Sword Art Online and why it's still such a good anime. For this video, since it's part 1, we're only going to be doing the first half of season 1. So yeah, I also wanted to mention that essentially this is going to be like me more narrating every episode instead of a typical video where it's kind of like they give their own point of view in certain things. I mean, I might throw a couple things there, but mainly it's just going to be me saying like, hey, what's going on in the episode. So, if you're looking forward to having something play in the background, or so this is future me editing. It's going to be a pretty long video, decent amount of time, so make sure you stay strapped in and enjoy. So this anime starts with the protagonist Kyoto listening to a news program talking about Sword Art Online's game launch. So then Kyoto logs into the game with the Nervier headset. For short, this is basically just like his mind in the game, so he cannot interact or move any parts of his body in the real world, at the moment, while he's in the nerve gear. He starts running around the first town, where he meets this guy called Klein, and since he's a beta tester, and Klein was asking for help, he decides to help him out and give him some advice. Later, when Kirito tries to attempt to log out, he can't find the log out button. Kirito checks again a few minutes later. Everybody gets teleported to the beginning of the game, and the creator announces himself, and he also mentions the logout button is absent, and it was the intention of the game. He also announces that you cannot leave the game. Removing the headset in real life will kill you. Also, dying in the game will also kill you. And the only way to escape is to clear all 100 floors. This is like an amazing start to an anime, and at the time it was very unique. It came out in like 2012. Then all mayhem and panic sets in. People get changed to what they look like in real life because the game owner gives everybody an item, which is a mirror that will change yourself into what you actually look like. And he also announces that 213 people died because people removed the headset, which microwaved and fried their brain. And later on in the episode, towards the end, Kirito decides to team up with Klein, but Klein ended up refusing because he has some buddies waiting for him. And at this point, it's the end of the episode, and Kirito decides to go on solo. So we are now in episode 2. It starts with a meeting for the boss, floor 1. Kirito forms a party with Asuna during this time. And their meeting's pretty tension because there's these beta testers, and Kirito is a beta tester, and they believe that they're hoarding info and just not helping people out in the game. And it started to make like some distress moments among the group. Later, Kirito talks to Asuna, which is the girl in the cloak in their first part, and finds out she has no experience, and they end up discussing strategies for the boss, and they form a party. They first arrive to the boss, right? The plan sets in motion, everything's going as, it's supposed to. And halfway during the battle, when the boss changes his weapon, Kirito realizes that it is different in the beta, and Divel, which was the boss being leader, goes in for the last shot, but he ends up taking a bunch of damage, and essentially he reveals he was a beta tester and he ends up dying. At this point, Asuna and Kirito work together to defeat the boss with a bit of help after they formed a team. And also as long as us people in the barbs fight were helping as well. A lot of players get angry at Kirito, and he steps in and he takes the blame, calling himself a beater, which is a beta tester and a cheater, because he believes he was better than them. And that's basically how the episode goes. So a bit of time has passed since the second episode, where Kirito ends up going solo. Eventually he meets this small little guild called the Moonlight Black Cats, and he decides to join them. He also hides the fact, like how currently strong he is, and he was a former beta tester as well. He's not telling them. He goes on the bond on one of the members called Sachi. She's like a typical shy, scared girl, and he promised to protect her, all that good stuff. Eventually they decide to, after a bit of time working together to explore high-level dungeon, they end up finding a secret room with a chest, but it turns out to be like an ambush trap, and the room is an anti-teleport crystal, so they're all trapped in there, and all the guild members are killed. Kirito tries his best, and they all end up dying. This leaves Kirito devastated, and his mind is full of guilt for lying to them months later. He hears about a rare item that revives a dead player. So, he goes by himself. Eventually, he meets up, to go find the boss. He ends up finding Klein and his buddies, and they were looking for the same item as well. He ends up going by himself because they ended up getting ambushed. But eventually, he goes and fights the boss by himself. He gets the item, but it only works after 10 seconds when a player dies. So he ends up giving it to Klein, and later during that night, he receives a message from Sachi before she died. And it was a message that made him really sad, but gave him a bunch of motivation. And that's really how the episode ends. It's a pretty depressing episode, but it helps build the character. If you're wondering what the message was, it was her saying thank you and singing a song for him. So it just fills him with sadness. Entering the 4th episode, again a bit of time has passed, and Kirito's known as the Black Swordsman. We start this episode, and we're following a girl called Silica, and at the moment she's currently surrounded by monsters in a woods. She is a beast tamer, so she has a pet called Pina, which is a little dragon. Ends up dying trying to help her. Kirito shows up, but he was too late for the pet. The pet meant a lot to her. Kirito mentions that there's a rare item called the Numa flower, and it can revive familiar, used within a time window. At this point, he offers to help, so they end up teaming together and traveling to a high-level area called the Forest of the Wandering. They're looking for a dungeon that has the Numa flower. The area is very hard for Zilga level during this time, and yeah, so far, the concept of the anime, introduces and creates a lot of tension. The visuals are good, and they're pretty clean so far. For visual-wise, not too bad. A group of players were following them, and they end up revealing that they're PKers, player killers. And they wanted to kill Silica and steal her items, and was way too strong for them. He doesn't even have to attack. They can't kill him if they tried, due to his level. Kirito reveals he was working for a client to find these group of players who killed and stole everything from his group. They end up getting the flower. Once you reach the top of the dungeon, Pina gets revived. Silica's very happy, and she thanks Kirito for the help, and once again, Kirito goes on solo. That's how it goes. Episode 5. This episode starts on the 56th floor, where they're discussing on how to kill the boss on the floor. Kirito decides to bash heads with Asuna after not agreeing with her plan. And after the meeting is over, Kirito is lying down on the ground, and Asuna walks by, asks what he's doing, and he's just laying down, enjoying his day. She ends up falling asleep, and Kirito watches over. When she wakes up, she decides she's going to treat him to dinner for watching over. By the way, I just want to say this episode has an arc, which I'm not a big fan of. Basically, there's a murder in the safe zone. Yeah, I'm just going to brush past this, essentially. People witness another death in a safe zone, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And again, another person dies in a safe zone, so they team up to investigate, and they try to figure out what's going on. And Kirito, one day, when he's munching on a sandwich, Asuna realizes that whenever the sandwich expires, it looks similar to a murder. He realizes that the deaths are fake, and they're just trying to make it seem like people were dying. During this episode, Kirito's bond grows with Asuna. Now we are on episode 6. So they start digging into the safe zone murders, and they discover that the victims were part of a guild together. Kirito realizes that, this plays off the last episode, it's nobody's being killed. They're just secretly lowering the HP of an item and then teleporting to make it seem like they're being killed. The real motive is there's a rare item called the Revive Pistol, and one of the guild members in the past argued over how it was used. And for some reason, this is a big deal, makes a bunch of resentment, guilt, and people wanted revenge. Grimlock is the killer, which is the man who claimed to witness his wife's death. Apparently, he killed her, something like that. And his wife was acting strangely, and Grimlock changed and she became obsessed. That was his whole point of view. what really happened was she was murdered outside the safe zone and everything was staged. So this episode begins with Kirito visiting a shop of this blacksmith. Her name is Elizabeth. She's known for crafting high quality weapons. So Kirito is looking to get a better weapon. He decides to, ask her for her best sword, and he tests it and breaks it. This really pisses her off, and she decides to challenge him, to prove himself. So they go on this journey to get this rare crystal that comes from a dragon in order to make this really good weapon. On the journey there, they fall into a deep pit, and they're stuck overnight, and essentially they kind of have to rely on each other. During this time, while they're trapped, I guess you could say Elizabeth kind of gets feelings for Kirito. She starts to fall in love with him. They end up sleeping through the night. The next day they escape, and they were able to defeat the dragon, flying through the air. Eventually, they get back to their shop. Elizabeth crafts the dark repulsor. But Elizabeth kind of realizes that there's a thing going on between Kirito and Asuna. She gets really upset. And Elizabeth accepts the things how it is. And Kirito and Asuna, again, grow closer. Even though it's very subtle, they do end up growing closer. On the 8th episode, Kirito finds a rabbit that can only be cooked with such a high cooking skill. It's a rare rabbit. I think it's an S-class rabbit or whatnot. He's in for Eigo shop, which is a blacksmith who is also his friend. While he was there, Asuna shows up with his bodyguard. And so far, the bodyguard has been acting weird. Currently, she's in second command for the best guild in Aincrad. And they end up going to Asuna's place to, eat this rabbit, because it's very hard to find. Once they prepared the meal, they ended up eating, talking, and whatnot. And once they finished the meal, Kirito also form a party. He has not done that since the Moonlight Black Hats, which, if you remember back then, was the old guild it used to be. Later on, Asuna finds out that her bodyguard was outside her house when he was not supposed to. So she goes to Kirito, and basically the bodyguard follows. He tells her that he's got it, and the bodyguard, doesn't want to leave. So they decide to duel. Kirito breaks his sword. He doesn't even have a chance. Kirito and Asuna's started bonding again. They end up becoming friends now, and they go on to eat. And I think this is the end of the episode. I'm glad. On to episode 9. It starts off just where we left off, of them running away. Asuna starts talking to Kirito, and she starts asking him, why doesn't he use a shield? And the new sword that he got commissioned from Elizabeth, the blacksmith, but to no avail. After a bit of banter, they just decide to eat, and she just brushes it off. And Klein and his buddies actually show up, and they introduce themselves to Asuna because it's their first time seeing them. And eventually an army from floor 1 starts marching up, the Aincrad Liberation Force, and they ask for the map to the boss room to directions, and they argue, but Kirito was going to make it public information, so he's going to give it to them anyways. They end up clearing up more monsters towards the boss room, and they hear a scream from the area. So they go and investigate and see that the army is in really bad shape. And they also realize that the room is an anti-teleport room. One of the men dies in front of Asuna, so she runs in. In doing so, Klein and Kirito hop in as well. They start removing the people, and Kirito starts fighting back the boss. But Kirito has been hiding something, so he asks for his buddies to keep him off him for a little bit. And eventually he pulls out his other sword that Elizabeth gave him and starts dual wielding, and he starts using this school to heavily damage the boss. And after what seems like hours, he's able to defeat the boss essentially all by himself with just a sliver of health. He passes out for a split second, and he asks the whole group to keep silent about his, dual wielding skin. A little bit later, the commander of the Knights of the Blood Oath, number 1 ranking, takes interest in Kirito. They banter over Asuna. Heathcliff, who is the commander, proposes if he wants Asuna, he must defeat him in a duel. And if he loses the duel, he must join the guild. And after the duel, Asuna and Kirito go and clear out an area which leads to a boss room. Eventually they find the boss, which they see is the name Gleam Eyes, and they run away. You know, that name seems a little bit familiar. I wonder where it is. 10th episode begins with a duel against the commander Heathcliff. After losing the duel, Kirito is now part of the Knights of the Blood Oath. There is some foreshadowing in the duel, but we'll talk about that later. As he joins the guild, he has to get used to the standards, and then Kirito is assigned to train with Godfrey and Kuradel, which was Asuna's old bodyguard. After a while, they take a break, and Kuradel poisoned the meal and the drink that was given to them. He kills Godfrey right in front of Kirito, also revealing that he's part of a PK clan called the Laughing Coffin. He starts to attack Kirito slowly, killing him as he's paralyzed. Asuna comes in last second as she was watching on them on the map the whole time. Asuna hesitates to kill him and he pleads for his life, but it was a decoy and strikes her. But Kirito comes in, saving her, killing him. Asuna apologizes, claiming it was her fault, but Kirito pledges his life to her. They share a kiss and they end up spending the whole night. Pretty much wraps up episode 10. Looks like we got a love interest coming along. We are currently on the 11th episode. This is the shortest one that we have, so it's probably going to take less than a minute. But we're 4 episodes away from part 1. In this episode, Kirito and Asuna decide to take a leave, and they purchase a wood cabin. They end up spending some time together. And while they were walking through the forest, they find a little girl. And while they go up to talk to her, she falls on the ground and passes out. They discuss what to do, so they end up bringing her back to the cabin. Kirito and Asuna fall asleep, and when they wake up, the little girl is awake in the morning. They talk to her, and she says her name is Yui, and she can't remember anything. So they're trying to find out who her parents were. And like I said, very short episode, that concludes it. Episode 12 continues where the last episode ended. They continue to look for her parents when a woman approaches and asks them for help, seeing that some of the strongest players are in the area. So they decide to help her to find a guy called Thinker who has been left in a dungeon. As they arrive at the dungeon, they start clearing out monsters, and eventually they see Thinker stuck in a room. He starts yelling at them, but they cannot hear him, but he is telling them not to come over. They are ambushed by a boss with a level not being shown. So they don't know what level this boss could be. It could be 10, 20, 30 higher level than them. So Asuna and Kirito decide to fight. And as they're fighting, it's not looking very good. They start getting really destroyed. That's when Yui steps in and takes a blow. But it shows that she's an immortal object. And she deletes the boss. And as a result of this, the system realizes that Yui is no longer working correctly, and the system tries to delete her. So as she's being deleted, he was able to extract her soul through an item. Now this episode is like really upsetting because over time, even though it was a brief summary, they kind of grew to see her as their daughter. And just a really upsetting way for the episode to end. Alrighty, episode 13. 2 more episodes and then we actually finish this. So this episode is kind of a filler, so I'll kind of breeze by it a little bit. But essentially, Kirito starts fishing, and then a fisherman's there, they strike up a conversation, and he starts telling him about, his life, and they also mention there's a big fish he's been trying to catch. Eventually he just couldn't get it, and they spend the entire afternoon, and eventually he goes and catches it. Now, they leave. Kirito and Asuna go and talk to Commander Heathcliff. That he mentioned that he sent a huge party to a boss room that was an anti-teleport room, and when they opened the door to the boss room, they were all dead and there was no boss to be found. So Asuna and Kirito decide to help before they go. and they just discuss a little heartfelt moment, approaching the boss raid, consisting of a bunch of people they remember, like familiar people. They storm in, and a huge boss comes from the sky. It is it's called the Grim Reaper, basically like a caterpillar, but kind of like a skeleton version of it. And as he does that, a couple players get absolutely one-shotted. And that's when everybody tightens up and realizes, like, this is going to be a crazy fight. But that's the end of this episode. And the next episode is the last one, so stay strapped. Episode 14 begins with the boss raid of people dying left and right after what seemed like forever. They eventually defeat the boss, and it took about 14 players that died during the battle. Keep in mind, these are like the best players in the game. They're part of the top teams. There's like a legend that Heathcliff's bar never reaches yellow, so Kirito decides to strike him, and as to his surprise, it says immortal object. Kirito claims that he is protected by the system, and from episode 10, during his duel where there was some foreshadowing, he noticed that his reactions were unhuman. Eventually, Kaiba, who is Heathcliff, reveals that he is the owner of the game. Kaiba proposes to Kirito that he should get a reward for figuring him out, so he offers a duel to death with no cheats to put an end to the game. He also paralyzes everybody and gives one condition: Asuna cannot kill herself. Agrees, and the duel starts. As the duel starts, it's not looking so good for him, and just when he was about to be striked, Asuna jumps in and takes a death blow, killing her. Even though she was still paralyzed, she somehow did it, and he was distraught and attempts to fight, but it's not even close. Eventually, Kirito is killed. Somehow he just comes back from the dead as like a ghost. Kills him with Asuna's weapon and clears the game. That game, after years, is over. As he is loading back, Asuna and Kaiba are there, and they share a moment. And eventually, Kirito questions Kaiba, but he doesn't really answer. He kind of just very vague. The episode ends with Kirito waking up in the hospital. And gents, this is the end of part 1 overall for basically the first half of the season. I am biased, and I would say this anime is really good, but don't take my word for it. Go watch it yourselves. For the time this came out, I would say this is probably one of the giants, in my personal opinion. What I mean by the giants is like some of the best, or the best, like the pillars. But anyways, thank you all for watching. Please enjoy the rest of your day. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and click on some of the buttons. If you had any comments about the video or anything else, go ahead and leave them. Peace out.